My name is Nabil, Rizki Adinda, and I would like to tell you about my contextualization and also argument under the motion that this House prefer the strategy of pushing for institutional reform to address police abuse and misconduct rather than defunding police. So, but first of all, I would like to rebut the point that given by the government side of the house. So they state that it is unfair because it is the case of one people. How could the all sectors get the impacts? So actually, it is happened because of they cannot train them. They cannot train the public, the police officer for well, and doesn't have a strict system to make sure the all of police officer will not do that. But then, if we defunding the police, if we defunding the police, they can maximize it, which is we can maximize the train of the police officer. And also, it is actually still fair because how do we know if those actions were not independent actions? I mean, how if there is a superiors or their boss that asks them to do that? Because we know that the police officer itself are hard to reject what their superior asks. So what their boss or superiors thought should be done by them. And if their superiors ask them to do violence or discrimination, even kill civilians or people, the only things that they can do is done those things. So we have to accept the all possibility and give sanctions for all police officer to do not do that again, and can make sure them to not do violence or even kill the civilians. So now I would like to give my contextualizations. So the parameters that I would like to talk in here, we as the government do not prefer the strategy of pushing for institutional reform to address police abuse and misconduct rather than defunding the police. So the status quo that we have in here, we know that there is a case, there is George Floyd that killed by the police officer, and also there is a discrimination action that happened to the students, to the Papua students a few months ago. And the problem that we have by this status quo, it can create a lot of harm among the society, which is violence cases that to the civilians by the police officer can still happen, because pushing for institutional reform are not enough to give a sanction to the all of police officer that maybe had a tendency to do that. So, and also the second of all, the others officer had a tendency to do some crisis action to civilians that had a tendency to follow those actions because the sanction was not enough for them. So the solution that I delivered to you in here, we would like to do defunding the police with the mechanism that we want to allocate those funds to the others government agency and programs such as social services, youth services, in housing, education, healthcare, and others community resources. With those mechanisms, we can make sure that we can get our goal, which is we would like to the crime action that involve the police officers will not happen again and can counter the same things to be happen because we give a burden sanction for all of society. And actually, and we move to my argument. Why it is unjustified? Because we know that the status quo right now, which is the characteristic of the society, that we know that the racism and discrimination still happen until now. Such as what I said before, there is a cases that George Floyd that killed by the police officer, and also the violence or cases, discrimination cases to the Papuan student that happened a few months ago. Which is, with those kind of things, show that every single human in this world, whether they are police or the public officer, had a tendency to do racism and discriminations. And also, and we believe that if we independently investigate them, the training of officers that being overhauled and monitored, that those kind of things are actually not enough, because if the sanction was going to those people and some people on that circle, and doesn't give a big impact for all of society. We know that every single people, because we know that every single people had a tendency racism feelings was still there, but still pent up and hidden by themselves. And once when they are uncontrolled, it will be uncontrolled those feelings. It will be happen again. The violence that will be killed those civilians will be happen against. They will and also, or the worst things that might be happen, the other people can do that. So, and also beside that, when we defunding the police to the others government agencies and programs such as social services, youth services, housing, especially on education, we can make sure that the racism and discrimination will not happen. Why? Because we can maximize the others thing that can help to cover this problem at the very first place, especially on education. Those programs can be maximal and can be used to educate people to doesn't do racism actions. Besides that, we can put in order on how the police officer will be trained. Because we believe that when we defunding the police, we can make sure that the leaders of the police officer sector will try hard to make sure it is not happen again. They will try hard to teach or to educate their people to do not do racism, discrimination, and violence things. And if there is a police officer had a sign or even do that, they will revoke the position and make them out on the police sectors, which is it can give a reminder of all police officers. If you don't want to be like that and still want your careers be good, so you have to be avoid those things, and automatically with the high or strict orders, the police officer that had a tendency to do so will be muffled and step by step will be gone. And about how do we know? Maybe those public officers had get the orders from his superiors to do the violence. It's possible. So what we can do for that? So the only things that can we do is defunding the police, and actually there are still be happen on their side, because we know that it is not give a big impact for all our entire people on the police officer sectors, because of they still feel safe on those sectors. They are not had a sanction or trigger to be not do the same things. So for those reasons, I actually, as the first speaker from the negative side of the house, really disagree with this motion, and we would like to pushing for institutional reform to address police abuse and misconduct. So maybe just that for me. Thank you for your attention.